Picture yourself settling in for the evening, perhaps with a warm drink in hand, ready to let your mind drift down the timeless waters of the Nile and through the sand-covered corridors of history's most enduring civilization. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey through 4,000 years of Egyptian power, mystery, and human achievement so profound that it shaped not just the ancient world, but continues to captivate us today. This is the perfect video to help you relax, forget about the modern world's complications, and lose yourself in stories of pharaohs who built monuments to eternity, priests who guarded secrets that could raise the dead, and ordinary people who lived under the watchful gaze of gods who walked among mortals. What you're about to discover isn't the romanticized version of ancient Egypt you might expect from Hollywood films or museum displays. This is the complete story of a civilization that lasted longer than any other in human history. A society that was already ancient when Rome was founded, that had been building pyramids for over 1,000 years before the Greeks learned to write, and that continued to influence world culture long after its pharaohs had become distant memories. The Egyptians didn't just build impressive monuments, they created a way of life so perfectly adapted to their environment that it remained essentially unchanged for millennia. They developed medicine that could perform brain surgery, mathematics that could calculate the movement of stars, and religious systems so sophisticated that they influenced every major religion that followed. Yet they also practiced customs that would seem alien to us today, worshipped gods with animal heads, and devoted enormous resources to preparing for an afterlife that consumed more of their attention than their actual lives. Let's begin with a story that perfectly demonstrates both the brilliance and the strangeness of Egyptian civilization. The tale of Imhotep, a man who achieved what no other human being in history has ever accomplished. He became a god while still alive. In the 27th century BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Djoser in the Third Dynasty, there lived a man whose genius was so extraordinary that it transcended every boundary known to human achievement. Imhotep wasn't born into royalty. He was a commoner who rose to become high priest, chief architect, physician, and advisor to the pharaoh through sheer intellectual brilliance that impressed even the gods themselves. Imhotep's most visible achievement was the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, the world's first monumental stone building and the prototype for all pyramid construction that followed. But calling him simply an architect would be like calling Leonardo da Vinci simply a painter. Imhotep revolutionized Egyptian medicine, establishing surgical procedures and diagnostic methods that wouldn't be improved upon for thousands of years. He developed mathematical principles that enabled precise astronomical calculations and engineering feats that still puzzle modern experts. What makes Imhotep's story truly remarkable isn't just his intellectual achievements, it's how Egyptian society responded to his genius. Within a few generations of his death, Imhotep was being worshipped as a god of medicine and wisdom. Temples were built in his honour, prayers were offered for his intervention in healing the sick, and pilgrims travelled from across the known world to seek his divine assistance. This transformation from mortal man to divine being was unprecedented in Egyptian history. The pharaohs themselves were considered gods, but they were born to divinity through royal bloodline. Imhotep achieved godhood through merit alone, demonstrating that Egyptian civilization, despite its rigid social hierarchies, recognized and rewarded exceptional human achievement in ways that transcended all conventional limitations. The Step Pyramid that Imhotep designed for Djoser wasn't simply a tomb. It was a revolutionary architectural statement that announced Egypt's emergence as history's first great civilization. Before Imhotep, monumental buildings were constructed from mud brick and wood. His decision to use stone transformed architecture forever, and established construction principles that would influence building design throughout human history. But the Step Pyramid's deeper significance lay in its religious and social functions. The complex surrounding the pyramid included temples, courtyards, and ceremonial buildings that created a complete sacred city devoted to the pharaoh's eternal life. This wasn't just preparation for death. It was an elaborate system for ensuring that the pharaoh could continue to rule Egypt from the afterlife, maintaining the cosmic order that kept the universe functioning properly. Egyptian concepts of death and afterlife weren't morbid obsessions with mortality. They were sophisticated philosophical and religious systems that viewed death as a transformation rather than an ending. The elaborate preparations for afterlife that characterize Egyptian culture were actually preparations for eternal life. based on religious beliefs that promised continued existence for those who properly prepared for the journey beyond death. Imhotep's medical knowledge was equally revolutionary. Egyptian papyri attributed to his teachings describe surgical procedures for treating head injuries, setting broken bones, and treating various diseases with a precision that suggests systematic observation and experimentation. His diagnostic methods emphasized careful examination of symptoms, rational analysis of causes, and treatment approaches that combined practical medicine with religious healing rituals. The integration of scientific observation with religious practice characterized much of Egyptian intellectual achievement and demonstrates the sophisticated thinking that enabled Egyptian civilization to endure for millennia. Egyptians didn't see science and religion as opposing forces, but as complementary approaches to understanding and manipulating natural forces that governed human life. Imhotep's elevation to divine status also illustrates the Egyptian understanding of wisdom and knowledge as sacred gifts that connected humans with divine power. His intellectual achievements weren't viewed as purely human accomplishments, but as evidence of divine inspiration that made him a suitable object of religious veneration. The cult of Imhotep persisted throughout Egyptian history and eventually spread throughout the Mediterranean world. Greeks identified him with their healing god Asclepius, and his reputation for medical knowledge continued to attract patients seeking miraculous cures well into the Roman period. This longevity demonstrates the enduring appeal of his achievements and the profound impact that exceptional individuals could have on ancient civilization. But Imhotep's story also raises fascinating questions about the nature of genius and achievement in ancient societies. How did a civilization that we often think of as rigid and tradition-bound produce individuals capable of revolutionary innovation? What social conditions enabled someone of humble origins to rise to positions of extraordinary influence and eventually achieve divine status? The answer lies partly in the unique structure of Egyptian society, which balanced hierarchical stability with meritocratic advancement in ways that encouraged excellence while maintaining social order. Egyptian bureaucracy, religious institutions and royal administration provided pathways for talented individuals to demonstrate their abilities and advance according to their contributions to society. Egyptian education systems, though limited to a small elite, emphasized practical skills alongside cultural knowledge in ways that prepared students for real-world responsibilities. Scribal schools taught not only writing and arithmetic, but also engineering, medicine, law, and administration that enabled graduates to contribute immediately to Egypt's complex governmental and religious institutions. The Egyptian concept of ma'at, truth, justice, and cosmic order, provided philosophical foundations that encouraged intellectual honesty, practical competence, and ethical behavior that supported both individual achievement and social stability. This wasn't simply a moral code, but a comprehensive worldview that connected personal conduct with cosmic harmony in ways that motivated excellence while discouraging destructive competition. Now let us journey forward in time to explore one of the most fascinating and controversial periods in Egyptian history, the reign of Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who attempted to revolutionize Egyptian religion and society in ways that nearly destroyed the civilization he sought to reform. Amenhotep IV, who would later change his name to Akhenaten, ascended to the throne around 1353 BCE during the 18th dynasty, when Egypt was at the height of its power and prosperity. The empire stretched from Sudan to Syria, tribute flowed into Egyptian treasuries from conquered territories, and Egyptian art, culture, and technology influenced civilizations throughout the known world. Into this golden age came a pharaoh whose religious vision was so radical that it challenged every fundamental assumption of Egyptian civilization. Akhenaten declared that all the traditional gods of Egypt were false, that only one god, the Aten represented by the solar disk, was real, and that he, Akhenaten, was this god's sole representative on Earth. This wasn't simply religious reform, it was cultural revolution that attacked the foundations of Egyptian society. The traditional gods weren't just objects of worship, but the cornerstones of Egyptian identity, social organization, and political authority. The priesthood wasn't simply a religious institution, but an integral part of Egyptian government, economy, and education that employed thousands of people and controlled enormous wealth. Akhenaten's monotheistic revolution required the dismantling of temple complexes that had operated for centuries, the elimination of religious practices that had defined Egyptian identity for millennia, and the replacement of established cultural traditions with entirely new forms of artistic expression, religious worship, and social organization. The pharaoh established a new capital city, Akhetaten, modern Amarna, built entirely according to his religious vision and populated by supporters of his revolutionary agenda. This wasn't simply a change of residence, but the creation of an entirely new society designed to embody Akhenaten's monotheistic ideals while serving as a model for the transformation of all Egypt. The art produced during the Amarna period was unlike anything in Egyptian history. Traditional Egyptian artistic conventions emphasized idealized human forms, formal compositions, and symbolic representations that had remained essentially unchanged for over 1,000 years. Amarna art featured naturalistic depictions, emotional expressions, and intimate family scenes that suggested entirely different values and aesthetic preferences. Akhenaten and his queen, Nefertiti, were portrayed in ways that emphasized their humanity rather than their divinity. Royal family scenes showed the pharaoh playing with his children, embracing his wife, and engaging in domestic activities that previous Egyptian art had never depicted. This artistic revolution reflected deeper changes in how royal authority was conceived and presented to Egyptian society. But Akhenaten's religious revolution created enormous practical problems that threatened the stability of Egyptian civilization. The dismantling of traditional religious institutions disrupted established social hierarchies, eliminated career paths for educated Egyptians, and created economic chaos as temple-based agriculture and manufacturing systems collapsed. The traditional priesthood didn't simply disappear, they went underground, maintaining alternative power structures that opposed Akhenaten's reforms while waiting for opportunities to restore the old religious system. This created parallel governmental systems that competed for authority and legitimacy while undermining the pharaoh's ability to govern effectively. Foreign policy also suffered as Akhenaten devoted his attention to religious reform while neglecting the diplomatic and military activities necessary to maintain Egypt's empire. Letters from Egyptian vassals and allies describe increasing desperation as enemies attacked Egyptian territories, while the pharaoh ignored requests for military assistance, apparently convinced that his religious transformation was more important than mundane political concerns. The Amarna letters, diplomatic correspondence discovered in the ruins of Akhenaten's capital, provide fascinating insights into the practical consequences of religious revolution. Foreign rulers wrote increasingly frantic appeals for Egyptian support, while expressing bewilderment at the pharaoh's apparent indifference to imperial responsibilities that his predecessors had taken very seriously. These letters also reveal the sophisticated diplomatic networks that connected Egypt with civilizations throughout the ancient Near East. The correspondence was conducted in Akkadian, the international diplomatic language of the period, and followed established protocols that had governed interstate relations for centuries. Akhenaten's disruption of these diplomatic practices had consequences that extended far beyond Egypt's borders. The domestic impact of Akhenaten's revolution was equally problematic. Traditional Egyptian religion wasn't simply about worshipping gods, but provided the conceptual framework that explained natural phenomena, social relationships, and individual identity in ways that gave meaning and structure to daily life. The elimination of traditional gods created psychological and social dislocations that affected millions of people. Egyptian religious practices had also provided community gathering places, festival celebrations, and social services that organized local life throughout the country. The closure of traditional temples eliminated these community centers, while failing to provide adequate replacements that could serve the same social functions. The economic consequences were equally severe. Traditional temples owned vast agricultural estates, operated manufacturing workshops, and controlled trade networks that employed significant portions of Egypt's population. The dismantling of these religious economic systems created unemployment, reduced agricultural production, and disrupted trade relationships that had sustained Egyptian prosperity for generations. Akhenaten's religious vision, however sincere, proved incompatible with the practical requirements of governing a complex civilization. His monotheistic theology may have been philosophically sophisticated, but his implementation methods created chaos that threatened Egypt's survival as an organized society. The pharaoh's death around 1336 BCE triggered immediate efforts to restore traditional Egyptian religion and society. His successors, including the famous Tutankhamun, systematically dismantled Akhenaten's reforms while attempting to repair the damage his revolution had caused to Egyptian institutions and international relationships. The restoration of traditional Egyptian religion wasn't simply conservative reaction, but careful reconstruction of social systems that had proven their effectiveness over centuries of successful operation. The returning priesthood faced enormous challenges in rebuilding temple complexes, re-establishing religious practices, and restoring public confidence in traditional institutions. Akhenaten's name was systematically removed from official records in a process that Egyptologists call damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory that attempted to erase all evidence of his existence from Egyptian history. This wasn't simply vindictive punishment, but reflected Egyptian beliefs that the pharaoh's religious revolution had threatened the cosmic order that kept the universe functioning properly. However, some aspects of Akhenaten's revolution had lasting influence on Egyptian culture. Amarna art styles continued to influence Egyptian artistic development, and the period's emphasis on naturalistic representation introduced elements that enriched subsequent artistic traditions. The religious speculation that characterized the Amarna period also influenced later Egyptian theological development in ways that aren't fully understood. The Akhenaten episode demonstrates both the flexibility and the limitations of Egyptian civilization. The society proved capable of surviving radical disruption and rebuilding itself, but the costs of Akhenaten's experiment were enormous, and the recovery process took generations to complete. From the religious revolution of Akhenaten, let us turn our attention to one of the most remarkable construction projects in human history, the building of the Great Pyramid of Giza, which required organizational capabilities and technical expertise that continue to amaze modern engineers and archaeologists. The Great Pyramid was built during the 4th dynasty, around 2580 to 2510 BCE, for Pharaoh Khufu, whose reign marked the peak of Old Kingdom pyramid construction. The monument required approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2.5 and 15 tons, transported from quarries hundreds of miles away, and assembled with precision that modern construction equipment would struggle to match. Recent archaeological discoveries have revolutionized our understanding of how this incredible project was accomplished. The pyramid wasn't built by slave labor as popularly believed, but by paid workers who lived in purpose-built communities that provided housing, food, medical care, and recreational facilities for the workforce. These workers received regular wages, adequate nutrition, and medical treatment that enabled them to perform the demanding physical labor required for pyramid construction. The logistics of pyramid building required supply chains that operated on industrial scales millennia before the Industrial Revolution. Copper tools had to be manufactured and maintained for thousands of workers. Food supplies had to be provided for communities that may have numbered over 20,000 people during peak construction periods. Raw materials had to be quarried, transported and processed according to precise specifications that ensured structural integrity. The transportation of massive stone blocks from distant quarries to the pyramid site required engineering solutions that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of physics, logistics, and project management. Blocks were moved using combinations of ramps, levers, rollers, and human labor organized according to systematic procedures that maximized efficiency while minimizing worker injury. Recent discoveries of papyrus records from pyramid construction projects provide detailed information about the administrative systems that managed these enormous undertakings. These documents describe work gangs organized according to specific specialties, supply distribution systems that provided tools and materials to workers, and quality control procedures that ensured construction accuracy. The precision of pyramid construction continues to astound modern observers. The Great Pyramid's base is level to within just 2.1 centimeters. Its orientation to cardinal directions is accurate to within 3/60 of a degree, and its internal chambers and passages are aligned with astronomical precision that suggests sophisticated mathematical and engineering knowledge. The internal structure of the Great Pyramid includes passages, chambers, and ventilation systems that demonstrate architectural planning and construction techniques of extraordinary sophistication. The Grand Gallery, a corbelled chamber that rises at a precise angle, represents engineering achievement that wouldn't be surpassed in stone construction until the Gothic cathedrals of medieval Europe. The pyramid's external construction required careful planning of ramp systems that enabled workers to raise massive blocks to heights exceeding 140 meters. Various theories have been proposed for these ramp systems, but recent evidence suggests that the Egyptians used internal ramps that were incorporated into the pyramid structure itself as construction progressed. The workforce organization for pyramid construction reflected Egyptian administrative capabilities that enabled coordination of complex projects involving thousands of workers with diverse specialties. Archaeological evidence indicates that workers were organized into crews with specific assignments, competitive relationships that motivated productivity, and reward systems that recognized exceptional performance. The pyramid building process also required quality control systems that ensured structural integrity while maintaining construction schedules that had to be completed within the pharaoh's lifetime. Evidence suggests that Egyptian engineers conducted regular inspections, made corrections when problems were discovered, and maintained construction standards that have enabled these monuments to survive for over 4,000 years. The religious significance of pyramid construction extended beyond simple tomb building to encompass complex theological concepts about the pharaoh's role in maintaining cosmic order. The pyramid wasn't just a burial place, but a machine for ensuring the pharaoh's successful transition to the afterlife and his continued ability to protect Egypt from beyond death. The astronomical alignments incorporated into pyramid design reflect sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics and their relationship to religious beliefs about the afterlife. The pyramid's passages and chambers were oriented to specific stars and constellations that played important roles in Egyptian concepts of the pharaoh's journey after death. But perhaps most remarkably, the Great Pyramid demonstrates Egyptian civilization's ability to mobilize enormous human and material resources for projects that served both practical and symbolic purposes. The monument functioned as a tomb, a religious center, a symbol of royal power, and a demonstration of Egyptian technological capabilities that impressed foreign observers and reinforced Egypt's international prestige. The economic impact of pyramid construction extended throughout Egyptian society and created employment opportunities that supported skilled crafts, administrative positions, and commercial activities. The demand for specialized materials and services stimulated economic development, while the presence of large construction workforces created markets for agricultural products and manufactured goods. The knowledge and expertise developed through pyramid construction influenced other aspects of Egyptian civilization, including temple architecture, urban planning, and engineering projects that improved agricultural productivity and transportation systems. The organizational methods pioneered for pyramid building were adapted for military campaigns, administrative projects, and commercial enterprises that enhanced Egyptian prosperity and power. The pyramid building tradition continued for over 1,000 years, demonstrating the enduring appeal of these monuments while showing how construction techniques evolved and improved over time. Later pyramids incorporated lessons learned from earlier projects while adapting to changing religious beliefs, economic conditions, and technological capabilities. Now let us explore the remarkable career of Hatshepsut, one of history's most successful female rulers, whose reign demonstrates both the opportunities and constraints that characterized women's roles in ancient Egyptian society, while showing how exceptional individuals could transcend conventional limitations through intelligence, determination, and political skill. Hatshepsut began her political career as the wife of Thutmose II and mother of Thutmose III, positions that should have limited her to supporting roles in Egyptian royal hierarchy. But when Thutmose II died and left his young son as heir, Hatshepsut initially served as regent and gradually transformed herself into pharaoh in her own right, ruling Egypt for over 20 years during one of its most prosperous periods. The process by which Hatshepsut established her authority as pharaoh required extraordinary political skill and demonstrates the flexibility of Egyptian governmental systems despite their apparent rigidity. She couldn't simply declare herself pharaoh, but had to convince the powerful priesthood, administrative bureaucracy, and military leadership that her rule was legitimate and beneficial for Egypt. Hatshepsut's legitimation strategy combined religious authority with practical competence in ways that gradually built support for her unprecedented position. She claimed direct divine appointment by the god Amun, commissioned artworks that depicted her receiving divine recognition, and demonstrated administrative and military capabilities that proved her fitness to rule Egypt effectively. Her transformation from queen to king involved even changing her physical representation in official art and sculpture. Early depictions show Hatshepsut in traditional female royal regalia, but later images present her wearing the false beard and traditional pharaonic clothing that symbolized royal authority. This wasn't deception, but adaptation to Egyptian concepts of kingship that required specific visual symbols regardless of the ruler's biological gender. Hatshepsut's reign was marked by remarkable prosperity and international prestige that validated her claims to legitimate authority. Egypt experienced internal peace, economic growth, and cultural flourishing that rivaled the greatest periods in the Egyptian history. Her administrative competence and foreign policy success provided practical justification for her rule that overcame theoretical objections to female pharaonic authority. One of Hatshepsut's most famous achievements was the expedition to Punt, a legendary trading partner that provided Egypt with exotic goods, including incense, gold, ivory, and live animals, that were highly valued for religious and ceremonial purposes. This expedition wasn't simply a commercial venture, but a diplomatic and propaganda success that demonstrated Egypt's international reach and Hatshepsut's capability as a leader. The expedition to Punt was carefully documented in detailed reliefs and inscriptions that provide fascinating insights into ancient African geography, international trade relationships, and Egyptian expeditionary capabilities. The artwork shows Egyptian ships, foreign peoples, exotic animals, and valuable trade goods that illustrated Egypt's connections with distant lands. Hatshepsut's building projects rivaled those of any pharaoh in Egyptian history, and created architectural monuments that continue to impress modern visitors. Her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri represents one of ancient Egypt's most innovative architectural achievements, combining traditional Egyptian design elements with revolutionary approaches to integrating buildings with natural landscape features. The temple's terraced design, colonnaded halls, and scenic location demonstrate sophisticated understanding of architectural aesthetics that went beyond functional requirements to create environments of extraordinary beauty and spiritual power. The integration of architecture with landscape created visual effects that enhanced the building's religious functions while demonstrating Hatshepsut's artistic vision. Hatshepsut also commissioned numerous obelisks, including some of the largest ever created, that served both as religious monuments and propaganda statements about her reign's achievements. These obelisks required enormous resources and technical expertise that demonstrated Egyptian engineering capabilities while providing permanent records of the pharaoh's accomplishments. The inscriptions on Hatshepsut's monuments provide detailed information about her achievements, religious devotion, and political philosophy that offer unique insights into how she understood and justified her unprecedented role as female pharaoh. These texts emphasize her divine appointment, her dedication to Egyptian welfare, and her success in maintaining peace and prosperity. However, Hatshepsut's reign also involved complex relationships with Thutmose III, her stepson, and theoretically the legitimate heir to the throne. For most of her reign, Thutmose III remained in subordinate positions despite his royal bloodline, creating political tensions that were managed through careful diplomacy and power-sharing arrangements. The relationship between Hatshepsut and Thutmose III has been interpreted in various ways by modern historians, ranging from hostile competition to cooperative partnership. Recent scholarship suggests that their relationship was more collaborative than previously thought, with both individuals contributing to Egypt's prosperity and international success during this period. Hatshepsut's death around 1458 BCE marked the end of an extraordinary reign, but her legacy continued to influence Egyptian politics and culture for centuries. Thutmose III, who succeeded her, initially continued many of her policies while gradually asserting his own authority, and eventually launching the military campaigns that made him one of Egypt's greatest conqueror pharaohs. The later attempt to erase Hatshepsut's name from official records, long attributed to Thutmose III's vindictive hostility, is now understood as part of standard Egyptian practices for managing royal succession and ensuring theological continuity. The removal of her names and images from monuments wasn't necessarily personal animosity, but institutional procedures for clarifying royal lineage and religious authority. Hatshepsut's story demonstrates the remarkable flexibility of Egyptian civilization and its ability to adapt to exceptional circumstances while maintaining cultural and political stability. Her successful reign proved that individual capability could overcome traditional limitations when combined with political skill and institutional support. Her achievements also highlight the important roles that women played in Egyptian society, despite male-dominated political structures. Egyptian women enjoyed legal rights, economic opportunities, and social respect that were unusual in ancient civilizations and provided foundations for exceptional individuals like Hatshepsut to achieve remarkable success. Let us now journey into the mysterious world of Egyptian medicine, which combined scientific observation with religious healing in ways that produced medical knowledge and surgical techniques that wouldn't be surpassed until modern times, while also revealing the complex relationships between religion, science, and human understanding in ancient civilization. Egyptian medical papyri, including the famous Edwin Smith surgical papyrus and the Ebers medical papyrus, preserve detailed information about Egyptian medical knowledge that demonstrates sophisticated understanding of human anatomy, disease processes, and treatment methods that were based on careful observation and systematic experimentation. The Edwin Smith surgical papyrus, dating to around 1600 BCE but containing much older medical knowledge, describes surgical procedures for treating head injuries, spinal damage, and various traumatic conditions with precision that suggests extensive practical experience. The papyrus includes detailed descriptions of symptoms, diagnostic procedures, and treatment options that reflect systematic approaches to medical problem-solving. Egyptian physicians understood the circulatory system well enough to use pulse diagnosis for evaluating patient conditions, recognized the relationship between heart function and overall health, and developed treatments for cardiovascular problems that demonstrated sophisticated physiological knowledge. Their understanding of blood circulation preceded European medical discoveries by thousands of years. Egyptian surgical procedures included operations that modern surgeons would recognize as technically demanding and dangerous, even with contemporary equipment and techniques. Evidence suggests that Egyptian doctors performed brain surgery, removed tumors, set complex fractures, and conducted eye operations that required extraordinary skill and anatomical knowledge. The integration of religious and medical practice in Egyptian healing wasn't simply superstition, but reflected comprehensive approaches to health that recognized psychological, spiritual, and social factors in disease and recovery. Egyptian physicians understood that healing involved more than just physical treatment, and developed therapeutic approaches that addressed patients' complete well-being. Egyptian medical education apparently included both theoretical instruction and practical apprenticeships that prepared physicians for independent practice. Medical students learned anatomy through dissection, studied diagnostic techniques through patient observation, and mastered surgical procedures through supervised training that created professional competence and ethical standards. The specialization within Egyptian medicine included physicians who focused on specific types of problems, eye doctors, surgeons, internists, and specialists in women's health who developed expertise in particular areas while maintaining general medical knowledge. This professional specialization enabled more effective treatment while creating career paths for medical practitioners. Egyptian pharmaceutical knowledge encompassed hundreds of plant, animal, and mineral substances that were used individually and in combinations to treat various conditions. Egyptian pharmacology was based on systematic experimentation and observation that identified effective substances while documenting dosages, preparation methods, and administration techniques. The preservation of medical knowledge through written papyri demonstrates Egyptian commitment to accumulating and transmitting medical expertise across generations. Medical texts served as reference works for practicing physicians, while preserving successful treatments and diagnostic methods for future practitioners. Egyptian medical practice also included preventive medicine that emphasized hygiene, nutrition, and lifestyle factors in maintaining health and preventing disease. Egyptian physicians understood the relationships between environment, behavior, and health outcomes in ways that enabled them to provide advice that could prevent medical problems before they developed. The social status of Egyptian physicians was relatively high, with successful doctors enjoying respect, good incomes, and opportunities for advancement within Egyptian society. Medical practice provided career paths for educated individuals, while creating professional communities that maintained standards and continued advancing medical knowledge. Egyptian medical ethics, as reflected in medical papyri and other sources, emphasized physician responsibility for patient welfare, professional competence, and honest acknowledgement of limitations. Egyptian doctors were expected to provide appropriate treatment while recognizing when conditions were beyond their ability to cure. The international reputation of Egyptian medicine attracted patients from throughout the ancient world and influenced medical development in other civilizations. Egyptian medical knowledge spread through trade relationships, diplomatic contacts, and student exchanges that carried Egyptian medical techniques and pharmaceutical knowledge to other cultures. Egyptian medical achievements demonstrate the sophisticated scientific thinking that characterized Egyptian civilization and its ability to develop systematic approaches to understanding natural phenomena. Egyptian physicians combined empirical observation with theoretical analysis in ways that produced practical knowledge and effective treatments. The legacy of Egyptian medicine extends throughout subsequent medical history and includes fundamental concepts, diagnostic techniques, and treatment approaches that influenced Greek, Roman, Islamic, and European medical development. Many modern medical practices can trace their origins to innovations first developed by Egyptian physicians thousands of years ago. From the halls of ancient Egyptian medical schools, let us turn our attention to the incredible engineering project that sustained Egyptian civilization for millennia. The complex irrigation systems that tamed the Nile River and transformed Egypt from a desert into one of the ancient world's most prosperous agricultural regions. The Nile's annual flood cycle was both Egypt's greatest blessing and its most dangerous challenge. The river's predictable yearly inundation brought fertile silt that renewed agricultural land. But the flood's timing, duration, and intensity varied from year to year in ways that could either provide abundant harvests or create famine conditions that threatened the survival of Egypt's population. Egyptian engineers developed sophisticated irrigation systems that captured floodwaters, distributed them across agricultural land, and stored surplus water for use during dry periods. This wasn't simply a matter of digging channels, but required comprehensive understanding of hydraulics, soil conditions, and agricultural requirements that enabled optimal use of the Nile's annual gift. The irrigation infrastructure included canals, reservoirs, dikes, and sluice gates that were integrated into comprehensive systems covering hundreds of miles of the Nile Valley. These systems required constant maintenance, skilled operation, and coordinated management that involved cooperation between local communities and central governmental authority. The nilometer, devices for measuring the river's flood levels, provided early warning systems that enabled Egyptian administrators to predict agricultural conditions and plan accordingly. These measurements were crucial for taxation policies, food distribution programs, and administrative decisions that affected millions of people throughout the Egyptian realm. Egyptian agricultural techniques adapted to irrigation capabilities included crop rotation systems, soil management practices, and planting schedules that maximize productivity while maintaining long-term fertility. Egyptian farmers developed specialized knowledge that enabled them to produce consistent surpluses that supported non-agricultural populations and created wealth for trade and construction projects. The social organization required for irrigation management created governmental institutions and administrative procedures that became fundamental features of Egyptian civilization. Irrigation required coordinated planning, resource allocation, and dispute resolution that necessitated systematic approaches to public administration and community governance. Egyptian irrigation technology influenced agricultural development throughout the ancient world and provided models for other civilizations attempting to manage water resources for agricultural purposes. Egyptian engineering techniques were adapted for different environments and conditions, while establishing principles that continue to influence modern irrigation design. The relationship between irrigation and Egyptian religion reflected the civilization's understanding of agriculture as a sacred activity that required divine cooperation and human responsibility. Religious festivals, rituals, and beliefs incorporated agricultural cycles in ways that reinforced community cooperation while providing spiritual meaning for the hard work required for successful farming. Egyptian agricultural prosperity based on sophisticated irrigation enabled the population growth, urban development, and cultural achievement that characterized Egyptian civilization. The agricultural surplus produced by irrigation systems provided the economic foundation that supported pyramid construction, artistic production, military campaigns, and international trade that made Egypt a major power in the ancient world. The maintenance of irrigation systems required specialized knowledge and skilled workers who developed expertise in hydraulic engineering, construction techniques, and system management. These specialists formed professional communities that preserved and transmitted technical knowledge, while innovating improvements based on practical experience. Egyptian irrigation achievements demonstrate the civilization's remarkable ability to modify natural environments through human ingenuity and cooperative effort. The transformation of the Nile Valley from seasonal floodplain to permanent agricultural region represents one of humanity's greatest environmental management successes and provided the foundation for 4 millennia of continuous civilization. Now, as we approach the twilight of our journey through Egyptian civilization, let us examine the fascinating period when Egypt became part of the Hellenistic world following Alexander the Great's conquest, and how Egyptian culture both influenced and was influenced by Greek civilization during the Ptolemaic period. When Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 BCE, he encountered a civilization that was already over 3,000 years old and had survived multiple foreign conquests, while maintaining its essential character and institutions. Alexander's approach to Egypt was respectful and pragmatic. He was crowned as pharaoh, according to traditional Egyptian ceremonies, and presented himself as the liberator of Egypt from Persian rule, rather than as a foreign conqueror. After Alexander's death, Egypt fell to Ptolemy I, one of Alexander's generals, who established the Ptolemaic dynasty that would rule Egypt for nearly 3 centuries. The Ptolemies faced the challenge of governing an ancient civilization with established traditions while introducing Greek administrative methods, cultural practices, and intellectual approaches that reflected Hellenistic civilization. The Ptolemaic solution was cultural synthesis that blended Egyptian and Greek elements in ways that created new forms of art, architecture, religion, and learning while preserving essential features of both civilizations. This wasn't simple cultural mixing, but sophisticated adaptation that enabled Greek rulers to govern Egyptian subjects while maintaining legitimacy with both populations. Alexandria, the new capital city founded by Alexander, became the greatest centre of learning in the ancient world, and demonstrated the creative possibilities that emerged from the meeting of Egyptian and Greek civilizations. The famous Library and Museum of Alexandria attracted scholars from throughout the Mediterranean world, while preserving and advancing knowledge from multiple cultural traditions. The Library of Alexandria represented unprecedented commitment to collecting and preserving human knowledge from all available sources. The institution's scholars systematically acquired books, manuscripts, and documents from throughout the known world, while developing new methods for organizing, copying, and transmitting information that influenced intellectual development throughout subsequent history. Ptolemaic religious policies maintained Egyptian traditional practices, while introducing Greek religious concepts in ways that created syncretic traditions, appealing to both Egyptian and Greek populations. The worship of Serapis, a deity that combined Egyptian and Greek religious elements, became popular throughout the Hellenistic world while demonstrating successful religious synthesis. Egyptian influence on Hellenistic culture was as profound as Greek influence on Egypt. Egyptian mathematical knowledge, astronomical observations, medical techniques, and engineering capabilities enriched Greek learning, while Egyptian artistic traditions influenced Hellenistic art and architecture throughout the Mediterranean world. The Ptolemaic period saw remarkable achievements in science, mathematics, and technology that resulted from the interaction between Egyptian practical knowledge and Greek theoretical approaches. Scholars working in Alexandria made fundamental discoveries in astronomy, mathematics, physics, and medicine that wouldn't be surpassed until the Renaissance. Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy, using geometric principles and astronomical observations that combined Egyptian practical techniques with Greek mathematical theory. Aristarchus proposed heliocentric theories that anticipated Copernican astronomy by over a millennium. Hero of Alexandria developed mechanical devices that demonstrated principles later applied in steam engines and automated machinery. The economic prosperity of Ptolemaic Egypt resulted from the combination of Egyptian agricultural productivity with Greek commercial networks that connected Egypt to markets throughout the Mediterranean world. Alexandria became a major commercial centre that facilitated trade between Africa, Asia, and Europe, while generating enormous wealth for the Ptolemaic kingdom. Egyptian cultural influence during the Ptolemaic period extended throughout the Roman world and influenced art, architecture, religion, and intellectual development in ways that persisted long after Egypt's incorporation into the Roman Empire. Egyptian religious practices, artistic styles, and intellectual traditions became integral parts of Greco-Roman civilization. The transition from Ptolemaic to Roman rule marked the end of independent Egyptian political authority, but continued the cultural synthesis that had characterized the Hellenistic period. Roman Egypt preserved many traditional institutions while integrating Egyptian resources and capabilities into the broader Roman imperial system. The legacy of Ptolemaic Egypt demonstrates the remarkable adaptability and enduring influence of Egyptian civilization. Despite foreign political control, Egyptian culture continued to evolve and influence world civilization while maintaining its essential characteristics and contributing to human knowledge and achievement. As our journey through 4 millennia of Egyptian civilization draws to a close, we can appreciate the extraordinary achievements of a society that created institutions, knowledge, and cultural traditions that continue to influence our world today. From the mathematical principles that enabled pyramid construction to the medical knowledge that saved countless lives, from the irrigation systems that transformed deserts into gardens to the artistic traditions that continue to inspire modern creators, Egyptian civilization represents humanity's longest and most successful experiment in creating lasting cultural achievement. The Egyptians understood something that many civilizations have forgotten, that true achievement comes not from conquering others, but from mastering the challenges of human existence through knowledge, cooperation, and dedication to ideals that transcend individual lifetimes. Their civilization endured for 4,000 years not through military might alone, but through the creation of systems, institutions, and cultural practices that served human needs while inspiring human potential. But there are still deeper currents in Egyptian history that demand our attention before we close this journey along the eternal Nile. Let us explore the mysterious world of Egyptian magic and religion, where the boundaries between science and spirituality, between the natural and supernatural, were far more fluid than our modern minds might expect. Egyptian magic wasn't the theatrical nonsense of modern entertainment, but a sophisticated system of practices based on detailed understanding of psychological, medical, and natural phenomena that achieved results which seemed miraculous to those who didn't understand the underlying principles. Egyptian magicians were often highly educated individuals who combined religious knowledge with practical skills in medicine, chemistry, psychology, and engineering. The famous Egyptian magical papyri describe procedures for healing diseases, influencing human behavior, predicting future events, and manipulating natural forces in ways that demonstrate systematic approaches to what we might call applied psychology and primitive science. These weren't random superstitions, but carefully developed techniques based on generations of experimentation and observation. Egyptian magical practices included the use of amulets, incantations, ritual procedures, and pharmaceutical preparations that combined psychological suggestion with genuine medical and chemical knowledge. The effectiveness of these practices often resulted from their integration of multiple therapeutic approaches that addressed both physical and psychological aspects of human problems. The training of Egyptian magician priests apparently included extensive education in astronomy, mathematics, medicine, psychology, and natural philosophy alongside religious instruction. This comprehensive education created practitioners who understood both theoretical principles and practical applications in ways that enabled them to achieve impressive results through seemingly supernatural means. Egyptian magical techniques influenced the development of alchemy, early chemistry, and experimental approaches to understanding natural phenomena that contributed to the eventual development of modern scientific methods. The careful observation and systematic experimentation that characterized Egyptian magical practice provided foundations for later scientific advancement. The religious dimensions of Egyptian magic reflected sophisticated theological concepts about the relationship between human consciousness, divine power, and natural forces. Egyptian magicians understood their practices not as manipulation of supernatural forces, but as cooperation with natural laws and divine principles that governed the universe. Egyptian magical papyri also reveal the existence of professional networks and educational institutions that preserved and transmitted magical knowledge across generations. These organizations maintained libraries, conducted research, and trained new practitioners according to established standards that ensured competence and ethical behavior. The international reputation of Egyptian magic attracted students from throughout the ancient world and influenced magical practices in Greek, Roman, and later European cultures. Egyptian magical techniques, adapted to different cultural contexts, became foundational elements in Western esoteric traditions that persisted throughout medieval and Renaissance periods. Now let us delve into the remarkable story of the Rosetta Stone and the decipherment of hieroglyphs, which opened the door to our modern understanding of Egyptian civilization and demonstrates how single discoveries can revolutionize human knowledge and cultural understanding. The Rosetta Stone, discovered by French soldiers during Napoleon's Egyptian campaign in 1799, contained the same text written in 3 different scripts: hieroglyphic, Demotic Egyptian, and Ancient Greek. This trilingual inscription provided the key that enabled scholars to crack the code of Egyptian hieroglyphic writing, which had been a mystery for over 1,000 years. The decipherment process, accomplished primarily by Jean-François Champollion in 1822, required extraordinary linguistic skills, cultural knowledge, and intellectual persistence that demonstrated the power of systematic scholarly investigation. Champollion's breakthrough came from recognizing that hieroglyphs represented both phonetic and ideographic elements, rather than being purely symbolic pictures. The ability to read hieroglyphic text revolutionized our understanding of Egyptian history, culture, and achievements. By providing access to thousands of years of Egyptian records, literature, and religious texts that had been incomprehensible to modern scholars. Suddenly, the voices of ancient Egyptians could be heard directly rather than through the interpretations of Greek and Roman observers. The decipherment of hieroglyphs enabled modern scholars to understand Egyptian mathematical texts that revealed sophisticated knowledge of geometry, algebra, and astronomical calculation. Egyptian mathematical achievements, previously unknown or misunderstood, proved to be far more advanced than historians had realized. Egyptian literary texts, made accessible through hieroglyphic decipherment, revealed rich traditions of poetry, fiction, religious writing, and philosophical reflection that demonstrated the intellectual sophistication and cultural richness of Egyptian civilization. These texts provided insights into Egyptian values, beliefs, and daily life that transformed scholarly understanding. The religious texts that became available through hieroglyphic decipherment included elaborate theological treatises, magical formulae, and mythological narratives that revealed the complexity and sophistication of Egyptian spiritual traditions. These texts showed that Egyptian religion was far more than primitive worship, but included sophisticated philosophical and theological concepts. Historical records written in hieroglyphs provided detailed information about Egyptian political history, foreign relations, and administrative practices that enabled scholars to reconstruct the actual course of Egyptian civilization rather than relying on often inaccurate accounts by foreign observers. The decipherment of Egyptian hieroglyphs also enabled the reading of medical, scientific, and technical texts that revealed Egyptian achievements in engineering, agriculture, manufacturing, and other practical fields. These discoveries demonstrated that Egyptian civilization had made fundamental contributions to human knowledge in numerous areas. The ongoing process of translating Egyptian text continues to provide new insights into Egyptian civilization and regularly produces discoveries that revise our understanding of ancient history, human development, and cultural achievement. Each newly translated text adds to our knowledge, while sometimes challenging previous assumptions about Egyptian society and culture. Let us now explore one of the most fascinating aspects of Egyptian civilization: their sophisticated understanding of astronomy and its integration with religious beliefs, agricultural practices, and architectural design in ways that created comprehensive systems for organizing human life according to cosmic principles. Egyptian astronomical knowledge was remarkably accurate and included detailed observations of stellar movements, planetary cycles, and celestial events that enabled precise calendar calculations and architectural orientations. Egyptian astronomers could predict eclipses, calculate the length of the year with extraordinary precision, and track planetary movements with accuracy that rivaled later astronomical achievements. The Egyptian calendar system represented one of humanity's earliest and most successful attempts to create systematic timekeeping that coordinated human activities with natural cycles. The Egyptian year of 365 days, divided into 12 months of 30 days plus 5 additional days, provided the foundation for calendar systems that continue to influence modern timekeeping. Egyptian astronomical observations were integrated with agricultural practices through systems that use stellar positions to predict the timing of the Nile's annual flood and optimal planting seasons. This integration of astronomy with agriculture enabled consistent agricultural success that supported Egyptian prosperity for millennia. The religious dimensions of Egyptian astronomy included complex theological concepts about the relationship between celestial movements and divine activities. Egyptian religious texts describe the daily journey of the sun god Ra across the sky and through the underworld in ways that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of solar cycles and their significance for life on Earth. Egyptian architectural achievements incorporated astronomical alignments that connected buildings with celestial events in ways that served both practical and religious purposes. The Great Pyramid's passages align with specific stars, temple orientations follow astronomical principles, and many buildings incorporate features that function as astronomical instruments. The preservation of Egyptian astronomical knowledge through written records, architectural features, and artistic representations provides modern scholars with detailed information about ancient astronomical observations and their cultural significance. These sources demonstrate the central role that astronomy played in Egyptian civilization. Egyptian astronomical achievements influenced the development of astronomy in Greek, Roman, Islamic, and later European cultures. Egyptian astronomical knowledge was preserved and transmitted through various cultural traditions that maintained and developed these insights throughout subsequent history. The integration of astronomy with other aspects of Egyptian culture, religion, agriculture, architecture, and calendar systems demonstrates the holistic approach that characterized Egyptian intellectual achievement. Egyptian astronomers didn't study the heavens in isolation, but understood celestial phenomena as integral parts of comprehensive systems that governed all aspects of human existence. Now, as we approach the final chapter of our journey through Egyptian civilization, let us examine the remarkable legacy of Egyptian culture and its continuing influence on modern civilization in ways that most people never recognize or acknowledge. Egyptian contributions to modern architecture include fundamental design principles, construction techniques, and aesthetic concepts that continue to influence contemporary building design. The use of columns, the integration of buildings with landscape, and the emphasis on monumental scale that characterize Egyptian architecture have inspired architects throughout history and continue to appear in modern construction. Egyptian medical knowledge provided foundations for subsequent medical development and established principles of diagnosis, treatment, and medical ethics that remain relevant today. Many modern medical practices can trace their origins to techniques first developed by Egyptian physicians thousands of years ago. Egyptian legal concepts, including written law codes, systematic jurisprudence, and procedural fairness, influenced the development of legal systems throughout the ancient world and contributed to the foundations of modern legal practice. Egyptian approaches to justice, evidence, and legal procedure establish precedents that continue to shape contemporary legal thinking. Egyptian mathematical achievements, including geometric principles, calculation methods, and problem-solving techniques, provided foundations for subsequent mathematical development and influenced the evolution of mathematics throughout history. Egyptian mathematical knowledge was preserved and transmitted through Greek, Islamic, and European mathematical traditions. Egyptian artistic traditions established aesthetic principles and artistic techniques that influenced art development throughout history. Egyptian artistic styles, symbolic systems, and decorative approaches continue to inspire contemporary artists, while Egyptian artistic achievements remain among the most admired and studied in world history. Egyptian religious and philosophical concepts influenced the development of major world religions and philosophical traditions in ways that continue to shape modern thought. Egyptian ideas about afterlife, divine justice, and cosmic order contributed to the foundations of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and various philosophical schools. Egyptian agricultural techniques and irrigation methods provided models for agricultural development throughout the world and established principles of environmental management that remain relevant for contemporary agricultural and environmental challenges. Egyptian organizational and administrative methods established precedents for governmental and institutional management that influenced the development of complex societies throughout history. Egyptian approaches to bureaucracy, record-keeping, and administrative coordination provided foundations for subsequent governmental development. The preservation of Egyptian knowledge through various cultural transmission processes enabled these contributions to continue influencing human civilization long after the end of independent Egyptian political authority. Egyptian achievements were maintained and developed by Greek, Roman, Islamic, and European cultures that recognized their value and continued their development. Egyptian civilization's greatest achievement may have been its demonstration that human societies can create lasting institutions, knowledge, and cultural traditions that serve human needs across thousands of years. The Egyptian example shows that civilizations can endure through adaptation and cultural evolution while maintaining essential values and achievements. The study of Egyptian civilization continues to provide insights into human potential, social organization, and cultural development that remain relevant for contemporary challenges. Egyptian achievements in engineering, medicine, agriculture, administration, and cultural synthesis offer lessons and inspiration for modern societies seeking to create sustainable and meaningful human communities. As we conclude our journey through 4 millennia of Egyptian civilization, we can appreciate the extraordinary scope of human achievement that the Egyptians accomplished along the banks of the Nile. From the first unification of Upper and Lower Egypt around 3100 BCE to the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty in 30 BCE, Egyptian civilization created an unmatched record of continuity, achievement, and cultural influence that continues to enrich human understanding and inspire human aspiration. The Egyptians built their civilization on foundations of knowledge, cooperation, and dedication to ideals that transcended individual lifetimes and personal interests. They understood that true greatness comes not from conquest or domination, but from the creation of institutions, knowledge, and cultural achievements that serve human welfare while inspiring human potential across generations. Their pyramids still rise from the desert sands, their temples still echo with the prayers of ancient priests, their art still speaks across 4,000 years of human history, and their achievements still challenge us to reach beyond the limitations of our own time and circumstances to create something worthy of the human spirit and deserving of eternal memory. Sleep well, and may your dreams carry you down the eternal waters of the Nile, past the great pyramids standing guard over the desert, through the sacred halls of Karnak, where priests once chanted prayers to gods whose names still echo in human memory, and into the timeless realm where the achievements of Egyptian civilization continue to inspire wonder, respect, and hope for what humans can accomplish when they dare to build not just for themselves but for eternity. But before we truly rest, there are deeper mysteries of Egyptian civilization that deserve our exploration. Stories that reveal the intricate mechanisms of daily life, the sophisticated technologies that sustained millions of people for millennia, and the remarkable individuals whose lives illuminate the human experience in one of history's most enduring societies. Let us delve into the fascinating world of Egyptian mummification, a practice that represented far more than simple preservation of the dead. The mummification process embodied Egyptian beliefs about consciousness, identity, and the nature of existence in ways that required sophisticated understanding of chemistry, anatomy, and psychology that modern science is only beginning to appreciate fully. The practice of mummification evolved over thousands of years from simple natural preservation to elaborate procedures that could take up to 70 days to complete. The most sophisticated mummification techniques, available only to pharaohs and the wealthy elite, involved complex chemical processes that preserved human tissues so effectively that bodies remain intact after thousands of years. The embalmers who performed mummification were highly skilled professionals who possessed detailed knowledge of human anatomy, chemical processes, and religious rituals that were essential for proper preservation of the deceased. These specialists underwent extensive training that combined practical skills with religious education, creating professionals who served both medical and spiritual functions. The mummification process began with the removal of internal organs through procedures that demonstrated sophisticated surgical knowledge. The brain was extracted through the nasal cavity using specially designed instruments, while other organs were removed through carefully planned incisions that minimized damage to the body's appearance while ensuring complete preservation. The removed organs were individually preserved using different chemical treatments appropriate to each organ's specific characteristics. The liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines were stored in canopic jars that were designed according to religious principles while serving practical preservation functions. Each jar was associated with specific protective deities and contained chemical solutions optimized for preserving particular organs. The body cavity was then treated with natron, a naturally occurring mixture of sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, and salt that dehydrated tissues while preventing bacterial decomposition. This chemical treatment was based on empirical knowledge of preservation chemistry that Egyptian embalmers had developed through generations of experimentation and observation. The external treatment of the mummy involved multiple layers of resin-soaked linen wrappings that created protective barriers while maintaining the body's shape and appearance. These wrappings were applied according to precise procedures that balance practical preservation needs with religious requirements for proper preparation of the deceased for afterlife journey. Between the layers of wrapping, embalmers placed hundreds of amulets and protective charms that served both religious and practical functions. These objects were positioned according to detailed religious texts, while serving as structural supports that maintained the body's integrity during the wrapping process and subsequent handling. The religious dimensions of mummification included elaborate rituals and ceremonies that accompanied each stage of the preservation process. These ceremonies weren't simply religious observances, but integral parts of the preservation procedure that ensured psychological comfort for the deceased's family, while maintaining community support for the complex and expensive mummification process. Egyptian beliefs about mummification reflected sophisticated concepts about the relationship between physical preservation and spiritual survival that influenced Egyptian behavior and social organization in profound ways. The investment in elaborate preservation procedures demonstrated Egyptian confidence in afterlife survival, while creating economic incentives for skilled craftsmanship and professional services. The chemical knowledge required for successful mummification contributed to Egyptian achievements in medicine, pharmacy, and early chemistry that influenced subsequent scientific development. The preservation techniques developed for mummification were adapted for preserving food, textiles, and other materials that enhanced Egyptian quality of life and economic capabilities. The social organization surrounding mummification created entire industries devoted to preservation services, including specialized craftsmen who produced coffins, canopic jars, and burial equipment according to elaborate specifications that combined artistic achievement with functional requirements. Egyptian mummification techniques varied according to social class and economic resources, with different levels of service available to meet diverse needs and budgets. This stratified system enabled widespread participation in mummification, while creating career opportunities and economic activity that benefited Egyptian society as a whole. Now let us explore the remarkable city of Thebes, which served as Egypt's religious capital, and demonstrates how Egyptian urban planning, architecture, and social organization created cities that functioned as comprehensive religious, administrative, and cultural centers serving populations that numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Thebes, known to the Egyptians as Waset, became Egypt's most important religious center during the Middle and New Kingdom periods, when it served as the cult center for Amun-Ra, the king of gods, and housed the most powerful priesthood in Egyptian history. The city's temples, administrative buildings, and residential areas were integrated into comprehensive urban systems that supported complex religious, governmental, and economic activities. The Karnak temple complex, the largest religious building ever constructed, covered over 200 acres and included temples, chapels, obelisks, and sacred buildings that were constructed and expanded over more than 2,000 years. This enormous complex wasn't simply a religious center, but served as Egypt's Vatican, Wall Street, and university combined into a single institutional network. The construction and maintenance of Karnak required enormous resources and sophisticated organizational capabilities that demonstrate Egyptian administrative and engineering skills at their peak. The temple complex employed thousands of priests, craftsmen, administrators, and workers who created a complete urban economy devoted to religious, educational, and cultural activities. The Karnak complex included specialized areas for different religious functions, temples for various gods, areas for religious ceremonies, schools for priestly education, workshops for religious equipment production, and storage facilities for the enormous quantities of goods required for daily religious activities and festival celebrations. The avenue of sphinxes connecting Karnak to Luxor Temple stretched for over a mile and included more than 1,000 sphinx statues that created one of history's most impressive ceremonial processional routes. This avenue wasn't simply decorative but served practical functions for religious processions, while demonstrating Egyptian sculptural capabilities and urban planning sophistication. The Luxor Temple, connected to Karnak by the Sphinx Avenue, served specific religious functions related to the divine kingship and royal renewal ceremonies that were essential for maintaining pharaonic authority and cosmic order. The temple's design and decoration reflected theological concepts about royal divinity, while serving practical political functions that reinforced governmental legitimacy. The administrative quarter of Thebes included governmental buildings, record-keeping facilities, and residential areas for the bureaucrats who managed Egypt's complex administrative systems. These facilities demonstrate the sophisticated governmental organization that enabled effective administration of territories spanning hundreds of miles, while maintaining detailed records of taxation, legal proceedings, and official communications. The residential areas of Thebes were organized according to social hierarchies that reflected Egyptian class structure while providing housing appropriate to different economic levels and professional requirements. Archaeological excavation of Theban residential areas reveal sophisticated urban planning that included water supply systems, waste management, and street layouts that facilitated both privacy and community interaction. The Theban necropolis on the west bank of the Nile included royal tombs, noble burial sites, and worker villages that demonstrate Egyptian approaches to death and afterlife preparation, while revealing social relationships and economic organization that characterized Egyptian urban life. The Valley of the Kings represents the most famous part of this necropolis, but was only one component of a vast burial complex that served Egyptian elite for centuries. The worker village of Deir el-Medina, home to the artisans who built royal tombs, provides unprecedented insights into daily life, social relationships, and working conditions in ancient Egypt. The village's records, preserved by Egypt's dry climate, include personal letters, legal documents, work records, and literary texts that reveal the lives of ordinary Egyptians in extraordinary detail. The economic organization of Thebes integrated religious, governmental, and commercial activities in ways that created complex urban economies that supported diverse populations while generating wealth that funded artistic production, architectural construction, and cultural development. The city's markets, workshops, and service industries created employment opportunities while facilitating trade and cultural exchange. Theban religious festivals, including the annual Opet Festival, attracted visitors from throughout Egypt and demonstrated the city's role as a national religious centre. These festivals combined religious ceremony with economic activity, cultural celebration, and social interaction that reinforced Egyptian cultural unity while providing entertainment and spiritual fulfillment for participants. Let us now examine the fascinating process of Egyptian tomb construction, focusing on the Valley of the Kings, which required engineering expertise, artistic achievement, and organizational capabilities that created some of humanity's most impressive underground monuments, while revealing Egyptian beliefs about death, afterlife, and royal authority. The Valley of the Kings served as the burial ground for New Kingdom pharaohs and selected nobles during a period spanning over 500 years, from approximately 1550 to 1070 BCE. The valley's location was chosen for both practical and religious reasons. It provided security for royal burials, while its pyramid-shaped peak associated it with traditional pyramid symbolism. The construction of royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings required sophisticated engineering that addressed challenges of working in solid limestone, while creating elaborate underground chambers and passages that could withstand geological stresses and environmental conditions. Egyptian engineers developed specialized tools, construction techniques, and project management methods specifically for underground construction. The planning of royal tombs involved careful coordination between religious requirements, architectural possibilities, and practical constraints that determined tomb layouts, decoration schemes, and construction schedules. Each tomb was designed according to religious texts that specified necessary chambers, passages, and decorative elements while adapting to the specific geological conditions of the chosen location. The workforce for royal tomb construction included specialized craftsmen, stonemasons, painters, sculptors, and designers, who possessed skills and knowledge that were passed down through generations of professional families. These artisans lived in the worker village of Deir el-Medina and formed professional communities that maintained construction standards and artistic traditions. The decoration of royal tombs included elaborate paintings and relief carvings that covered thousands of square meters of wall surface, with religious texts, mythological scenes, and artistic compositions that demonstrate Egyptian artistic achievement at its peak. These decorations weren't simply aesthetic, but served religious functions that were believed essential for the pharaoh's successful afterlife journey. The religious texts included in tomb decoration, collectively known as the Books of the Afterlife, contained detailed instructions and magical formulae that were believed necessary for navigating the dangers and challenges of the afterlife. These texts demonstrate the sophistication of Egyptian religious thinking and the importance placed on proper preparation for death and afterlife survival. The tomb of Tutankhamun, though relatively small and hastily prepared, contained over 5,000 individual objects that demonstrate the wealth and artistic achievement that characterized royal burial preparations. The tomb's contents included furniture, clothing, jewellery, weapons, religious objects, and personal items that provide unprecedented insights into Egyptian royal life and death practices. Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 required 3 years of careful excavation and documentation that revealed the complexity and richness of Egyptian burial practices, while demonstrating the challenges involved in archaeological investigation of such elaborate sites. Carter's meticulous methods set standards for archaeological practice, while preserving invaluable information about Egyptian culture. The tomb of Ramesses VI contains some of the most elaborate decorative programs in the Valley of the Kings and demonstrates the evolution of royal tomb decoration during the later New Kingdom period. The tomb's astronomical ceilings, religious wall paintings, and architectural features show how Egyptian tomb design adapted to changing religious beliefs and artistic preferences. The tomb of Seti I, the longest and most elaborate tomb in the Valley of the Kings, required over a decade to construct and demonstrates the enormous resources that could be devoted to royal burial preparation. The tomb's passages extend over 100 metres into the hillside and include chambers decorated with complete religious texts that provide comprehensive guides to afterlife journey and royal divine transformation. The security measures implemented in Valley of the Kings tombs included architectural features designed to deter tomb robbers while protecting burial equipment and royal mummies. These security systems combined physical barriers with religious curses and administrative oversight that reflected Egyptian understanding of the economic incentives that motivated tomb robbery. The village of Deir el-Medina, home to the royal tomb builders, provides detailed information about the social organisation, working conditions, and daily life of the specialists who created these underground monuments. The village records include work schedules, payment records, personal correspondence, and legal documents that reveal the human side of these remarkable construction projects. The artistic schools that developed in connection with royal tomb construction created distinctive styles and techniques that influenced Egyptian art throughout the New Kingdom, period and beyond. The training programs for tomb artists combined technical instruction with religious education that prepared craftsmen for the specialized requirements of religious architectural decoration. Now let us delve into the sophisticated world of Egyptian mathematics, which enabled the precise calculations required for pyramid construction, astronomical observation, and administrative record-keeping, while contributing fundamental mathematical concepts that influenced subsequent mathematical development throughout history. Egyptian mathematical knowledge, preserved in papyri like the Rhind mathematical papyrus and the Moscow mathematical papyrus, demonstrates systematic approaches to mathematical problems that combined practical applications with theoretical understanding. These mathematical texts weren't simply collections of problems, but educational materials that taught mathematical principles while providing training for administrative and engineering careers. Egyptian number systems used hierarchical symbols that enabled efficient calculation while facilitating written record-keeping for administrative purposes. The Egyptian decimal system included special symbols for different powers of 10 that simplified arithmetic operations, while providing systematic methods for representing large numbers accurately and efficiently. Egyptian fractional mathematics developed sophisticated methods for working with fractions that were primarily expressed as sums of unit fractions. This approach to fractional calculation required mathematical techniques that demonstrated understanding of least common denominators, fractional equivalency, and mathematical relationships that enabled complex calculations using relatively simple computational methods. Egyptian geometric knowledge included accurate formulas for calculating areas and volumes of various geometric shapes that were essential for architectural design, agricultural planning, and administrative taxation. Egyptian mathematicians understood relationships between geometric figures that enabled accurate measurement and calculation for practical applications. The Egyptian approach to calculating the area of a circle used approximations that were remarkably accurate and demonstrated sophisticated understanding of the relationship between circumference and diameter. Their approximation of pi as 256 over 81, approximately 3.16, was accurate enough for most practical applications while representing significant mathematical achievement for its time period. Egyptian algebraic thinking, though not formalized in modern algebraic notation, included systematic approaches to solving linear equations and proportion problems that were essential for administrative and commercial calculations. Egyptian mathematical methods could solve problems involving unknown quantities through systematic procedures that anticipated later algebraic development. The practical applications of Egyptian mathematics included surveying techniques that enabled accurate land measurement after annual Nile floods, architectural calculations that ensured structural integrity of massive buildings, and astronomical calculations that supported calendar systems and religious scheduling. These applications demonstrate the integration of mathematical knowledge with practical problem-solving that characterized Egyptian intellectual achievement. Egyptian mathematical education apparently included systematic instruction in calculation methods, problem-solving techniques, and practical applications that prepared students for careers in administration, engineering, and commerce. Mathematical competence was considered essential for educated Egyptians and provided pathways for social advancement and professional success. The preservation of Egyptian mathematical knowledge through written papyri enabled the transmission of mathematical techniques to Greek, Islamic, and later European mathematicians who built upon Egyptian foundations while developing new mathematical approaches. Egyptian mathematical contributions remained influential throughout ancient and medieval periods. Egyptian surveying techniques used geometric principles and practical measurement methods that enabled accurate land division, construction layout, and territorial mapping. These surveying skills were essential for maintaining agricultural productivity, taxation accuracy, and construction project success while demonstrating practical applications of mathematical knowledge. The relationship between Egyptian mathematics and astronomy included calculation methods that enabled prediction of celestial events, calendar coordination, and architectural orientations that served both practical and religious purposes. Mathematical astronomy was integrated with other aspects of Egyptian intellectual culture in ways that enhanced both theoretical understanding and practical applications. Finally, let us explore the remarkable story of Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, whose reign represents both the culmination of Egyptian royal tradition and the end of independent Egyptian political authority, while demonstrating the sophisticated diplomatic, intellectual and cultural capabilities that characterized Egyptian leadership at its finest. Cleopatra VII was born around 69 BCE into the Ptolemaic dynasty that had ruled Egypt for nearly 3 centuries following Alexander the Great's conquest. She was highly educated in multiple languages, mathematics, philosophy and rhetoric, while receiving training in governmental administration and diplomatic protocol that prepared her for the complex challenges of ruling Egypt during a period of increasing Roman pressure. Unlike many of her Ptolemaic predecessors who remained isolated within palace environments, Cleopatra actively engaged with Egyptian culture and religion, while learning to speak Egyptian alongside Greek, Latin and several other languages. This cultural competence enabled her to appeal to both Egyptian and Greek populations, while communicating effectively with Roman political leaders. Cleopatra's rise to power required overcoming significant obstacles, including civil war with her younger brother Ptolemy XIII and the complex politics of Roman intervention in Egyptian affairs. Her success in establishing undisputed control over Egypt demonstrated political skills and strategic thinking that enabled her to outmaneuver experienced rivals while maintaining Egyptian independence for over 2 decades. Her relationship with Julius Caesar wasn't simply romantic liaison, but sophisticated political alliance that served both Egyptian and Roman interests, while demonstrating Cleopatra's strategic thinking and diplomatic capabilities. The alliance provided Egypt with Roman protection, while giving Caesar access to Egyptian wealth and resources that supported his own political ambitions. Cleopatra's famous arrival in Rome as Caesar's guest demonstrated her understanding of political theatre and cultural diplomacy that created maximum impact while reinforcing her status as a legitimate ruler worthy of Roman respect. Her presence in Rome influenced Roman politics and culture while establishing precedents for Egyptian-Roman cooperation. Following Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra's alliance with Mark Antony represented another strategic political relationship that served Egyptian interests while providing Antony with resources for his competition with Octavian for control of the Roman world. This alliance combined personal attraction with practical political calculation that demonstrated Cleopatra's sophisticated approach to international relations. The famous meeting between Cleopatra and Antony, where she arrived dressed as Aphrodite on a golden barge, exemplified her understanding of psychological impact and cultural symbolism that created maximum political effect while appealing to Antony's personal interests and political ambitions. Cleopatra's domestic policies as pharaoh demonstrated traditional Egyptian royal responsibilities, while adapting to changing economic and political conditions. She implemented tax reforms, supported agricultural development, patronized religious institutions, and maintained Egyptian cultural traditions while managing the pressures created by Egypt's integration into the broader Roman Mediterranean world. Her intellectual achievements included contributions to mathematics, natural philosophy, and medical knowledge that reflected the educational traditions of Ptolemaic Alexandria, while demonstrating personal scholarly interests that went beyond political requirements. Cleopatra was recognized by contemporary observers as a highly educated and intellectually sophisticated ruler. The economic policies of Cleopatra's reign maintained Egyptian prosperity while managing the costs of political alliances and military preparations that were necessary for Egyptian independence. Her administrative skills enabled Egypt to remain wealthy and stable, despite the enormous pressures created by Roman civil wars and political instability. Cleopatra's military preparations for the conflict with Octavian demonstrated understanding of naval warfare and strategic planning that nearly succeeded in preserving Egyptian independence. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE was a close contest that could have changed the course of ancient history if Egyptian and Antonian forces had achieved victory. Her death in 30 BCE, following Octavian's victory and the suicide of Mark Antony, marked the end of Ptolemaic rule and Egyptian independence, but also demonstrated her determination to maintain royal dignity, rather than submit to Roman humiliation. Her chosen method of death, reportedly by aspi bite, connected her passing with traditional Egyptian religious symbolism. Cleopatra's legacy extends beyond her political and romantic relationships to encompass her role as the last representative of Egyptian royal tradition and Hellenistic culture. Her reign demonstrated the continued vitality of Egyptian civilization, while showing how ancient traditions could adapt to changing historical circumstances. The Roman propaganda that portrayed Cleopatra as a dangerous seductress obscured her genuine achievements as a ruler, diplomat, and intellectual leader who maintained Egyptian independence longer than most contemporary observers thought possible. Modern historical scholarship increasingly recognizes her political skills and cultural achievements that made her one of history's most capable female rulers. The transformation of Egypt from independent kingdom to Roman province following Cleopatra's death marked the end of over 3 millennia of Egyptian self-rule, but also began a new chapter in Egyptian history that would see continued cultural influence and adaptation under Roman, Byzantine, and Islamic administration. As we conclude this extended journey through Egyptian civilization, we can appreciate the extraordinary scope and enduring influence of a culture that created institutions, knowledge, and achievements that continue to enrich human experience after more than 4,000 years. From the mathematical principles that enabled pyramid construction to the medical knowledge that saved countless lives, from the religious insights that influenced world religions to the artistic traditions that continue to inspire modern creativity, Egyptian civilization represents humanity's most sustained achievement in creating lasting cultural value. The Egyptians understood that true greatness lies not in temporary conquest or momentary glory, but in creating institutions, knowledge, and cultural achievements that serve human needs across generations while inspiring human potential to reach beyond the limitations of any single lifetime. Their civilization endured because they built not just for themselves, but for eternity, creating a legacy that continues to challenge and inspire us to achieve our own lasting contributions to human civilization. Rest peacefully, knowing that the wisdom of ancient Egypt flows like the eternal Nile through the landscape of human knowledge, carrying forward the insights and achievements of a civilization that dared to believe in human potential and worked tirelessly to make that belief a lasting reality for all who would follow in their footsteps. Yet there are still more profound depths to Egyptian civilization that call for our exploration, stories that reveal the intricate social mechanisms, extraordinary technological achievements, and remarkable human experiences that made Egypt the wonder of the ancient world and continue to fascinate us today. Let us journey into the sophisticated world of Egyptian craftsmanship and manufacturing, which produced goods of such extraordinary quality and beauty that they were coveted throughout the ancient world and established Egypt as the premier source of luxury items, technological innovations, and artistic masterpieces that influence cultures across 3 continents. Egyptian metalworking achieved levels of sophistication that wouldn't be surpassed until the Industrial Revolution, combining technical expertise with artistic vision to create objects that served both practical and ceremonial functions. Egyptian smiths could work with gold, silver, copper, bronze, and iron using techniques that included casting, hammering, engraving, and inlay work that required years of training and generations of accumulated knowledge. The goldsmithing traditions of ancient Egypt produced jewellery and decorative objects that demonstrate mathematical precision in design, metallurgical expertise in execution, and artistic vision that created pieces of timeless beauty. The treasure of Tutankhamun includes over 100 pieces of jewellery that showcase Egyptian goldsmithing at its peak, with techniques including granulation, filigree, and cloisonné that required extraordinary skill and patience. Egyptian jewellery wasn't simply decorative but served religious, magical, and social functions that made these objects essential elements of Egyptian identity and status. Amulets and protective jewellery were worn by all social classes and incorporated religious symbolism, magical formulae, and protective designs that were believed essential for health, prosperity, and spiritual protection. The workshop organisation for Egyptian craftsmanship included master craftsmen, apprentices, and specialised workers who formed professional communities that preserved technical knowledge while innovating new techniques and designs. These workshops operated according to guild-like systems that maintained quality standards, trained new craftsmen, and protected trade secrets that gave Egyptian products their competitive advantages. Egyptian textile production achieved remarkable sophistication in both technical execution and artistic design, creating fabrics that were prized throughout the ancient world for their quality, beauty, and durability. Egyptian linen was particularly famous for its fineness and strength, with the best examples having thread counts that approached modern high-quality textiles. The cultivation and processing of flax for linen production required agricultural expertise, specialised equipment, and skilled labour that created entire industries devoted to textile manufacturing. The process from flax cultivation through spinning, weaving, and finishing involved dozens of specialised steps that required professional knowledge and quality control at every stage. Egyptian textile designs incorporated complex patterns, religious symbols, and artistic motifs that required sophisticated understanding of colour theory, pattern mathematics, and weaving techniques. The textiles found in Egyptian tombs include examples of weaving complexity that challenged the skills of even master craftsmen while creating fabrics of extraordinary beauty and symbolic meaning. Egyptian pottery and ceramics evolved from purely functional vessels to artistic creations that combined practical utility with aesthetic achievement. Egyptian potters developed glazing techniques, decorative methods, and firing procedures that produced ceramics of exceptional quality while experimenting with new forms and artistic possibilities. The famous Egyptian blue pigment, one of the first synthetic pigments ever created, required sophisticated understanding of chemistry and high-temperature processes that produced a colour of extraordinary brilliance and permanence. This pigment was so valued that it was exported throughout the Mediterranean world and used in the finest artistic works of multiple civilizations. Egyptian glassmaking represented one of the earliest systematic approaches to glass production and created objects of remarkable beauty and technical achievement. Egyptian glass vessels, jewellery and decorative objects demonstrate mastery of complex techniques including core forming, mosaic glass, and colour manipulation that required extensive knowledge of materials and processes. The perfume and cosmetics industry in ancient Egypt developed sophisticated products that served both practical and religious purposes, while creating trade goods that were highly valued throughout the ancient world. Egyptian perfumes, oils, and cosmetics required knowledge of chemistry, botany, and human physiology that enabled the creation of products that were both effective and luxurious. Egyptian furniture making achieved levels of craftsmanship that produced pieces of extraordinary beauty and durability, combining functional design with artistic decoration that reflected both technical skill and aesthetic vision. The furniture found in Egyptian tombs includes examples of joinery, carving, and inlay work that represent some of the finest woodworking ever achieved. Now let us explore the remarkable Egyptian transportation systems that enabled the movement of massive building stones, trade goods, and people across hundreds of miles of river and desert terrain, demonstrating engineering capabilities and organizational skills that supported Egypt's economic prosperity and cultural achievements. The Nile River served as Egypt's highway, providing transportation routes that connected Upper and Lower Egypt, while enabling efficient movement of goods and people throughout the kingdom. Egyptian boat building developed sophisticated vessel designs that were optimized for different purposes: cargo transport, passenger service, military operations, and religious ceremonies. Egyptian cargo vessels could carry enormous loads of stone blocks, grain, and manufactured goods using designs that maximize carrying capacity, while providing stability and maneuverability in Nile conditions. These ships used steering systems, sail configurations, and hull designs that enabled navigation in both downstream and upstream directions despite the challenges of varying wind conditions and river currents. The transportation of massive stone blocks for pyramid and temple construction required specialized vessels and handling equipment that could manage loads weighing dozens of tons. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed evidence of specialized quarry harbors, loading ramps, and transport ships that were specifically designed for moving construction materials over long distances. Egyptian road building, though less famous than Roman roads, included caravan routes that connected the Nile Valley with Red Sea ports, oasis settlements, and trading centers throughout the eastern desert. These roads required engineering solutions for desert travel, including way stations, water storage systems, and navigation aids that enabled reliable transportation across hostile terrain. The overland transportation of goods used donkey caravans, ox-drawn sledges, and human porters organized according to systematic procedures that balanced speed, efficiency, and cargo security. Egyptian transportation planning included scheduling systems, supply management, and security arrangements that enabled reliable delivery of goods across considerable distances. Egyptian harbour facilities included sophisticated dock systems, warehouse complexes, and ship maintenance facilities that supported both domestic and international trade. Archaeological evidence from ancient Egyptian ports reveals complex infrastructure that could accommodate large vessels, while providing secure storage and efficient cargo handling capabilities. The organization of Egyptian transportation networks required administrative systems that coordinated schedules, managed resources, and maintained infrastructure across hundreds of miles of territory. Transportation officials developed expertise in logistics, personnel management, and route planning that enabled efficient movement of goods and people throughout the Egyptian realm. Egyptian navigation techniques included astronomical observation, landmark recognition, and current analysis that enabled accurate travel planning and route finding. Egyptian navigators could predict journey times, identify favourable travel conditions, and avoid navigational hazards using knowledge accumulated through generations of professional experience. Let us now delve into the fascinating world of Egyptian agriculture beyond the basic irrigation systems we discussed earlier, exploring the sophisticated farming techniques, crop management strategies, and food production systems that sustained millions of people while generating the surpluses that funded Egypt's monumental achievements. Egyptian agricultural knowledge included detailed understanding of soil conditions, crop requirements, and seasonal patterns that enabled optimal agricultural productivity while maintaining long-term land fertility. Egyptian farmers developed techniques for soil preparation, seed selection, and harvest timing that maximized yields while protecting agricultural resources. The diversity of Egyptian crops included not only grain production but also vegetables, fruits, and specialized crops that provided varied nutrition while creating trade opportunities. Egyptian farmers cultivated wheat, barley, flax, dates, figs, grapes, and dozens of other crops, using techniques adapted to specific growing conditions and market demands. Egyptian animal husbandry included cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, and poultry that were raised using systematic breeding programs, feeding schedules, and healthcare procedures that maximize productivity while maintaining animal health. Egyptian livestock management required understanding of animal behavior, nutrition, and disease prevention that enabled successful animal agriculture. The integration of agriculture with religious practices included festivals, rituals, and ceremonies that coordinated agricultural activities while providing spiritual meaning for the hard work required for successful farming. Agricultural religion wasn't simply superstition but community organization that reinforced cooperation while celebrating the natural cycles that governed farming success. Egyptian food processing and storage techniques enabled preservation of agricultural surpluses through methods that included drying, salting, fermentation, and controlled storage that prevented spoilage while maintaining nutritional value. These preservation techniques enabled accumulation of food reserves that provided security against crop failures and supported non-agricultural populations. The beer and bread production that formed the foundation of Egyptian diet required specialized knowledge of fermentation, baking, and quality control that created consistent products while providing employment for skilled workers. Egyptian breweries and bakeries operated according to professional standards that ensured product quality while maintaining efficient production schedules. Egyptian agricultural tools and equipment included plows, sickles, winnowing baskets, and irrigation devices that were manufactured according to specifications that balanced effectiveness, durability, and cost. Agricultural equipment production required metallurgy, woodworking, and engineering skills that contributed to Egypt's overall technological capabilities. The economic organization of Egyptian agriculture included land tenure systems, labor management, and market relationships that balanced individual initiative with collective needs, while providing incentives for agricultural innovation and productivity improvement. Egyptian agricultural economics created stability, while encouraging advancement that enhanced overall agricultural output. Egyptian agricultural experimentation included efforts to develop new crops, improve existing varieties, and adapt farming techniques to changing conditions. Evidence suggests that Egyptian farmers systematically tested new approaches while preserving successful traditional methods that had proven effective over long periods. Now let's explore the remarkable Egyptian educational systems in greater depth, examining how Egypt created and maintained the educated professionals necessary for operating one of history's most complex civilizations, while preserving and transmitting knowledge across thousands of years of cultural development. Egyptian scribal education represented one of humanity's earliest systematic approaches to mass literacy and professional training, creating educational institutions that could produce the thousands of literate administrators, priests, and craftsmen necessary for Egyptian civilization's operation. Scribal schools combined practical skills training with cultural education that prepared students for adult responsibilities while preserving Egyptian intellectual traditions. The curriculum of Egyptian scribal schools included writing instruction in hieroglyphic, hieratic, and demotic scripts that enabled graduates to work with different types of documents and serve various administrative functions. Students learned to write on papyrus, ostraca, and stone using reed pens and ink, while mastering the complex symbol systems that recorded Egyptian language and knowledge. Egyptian writing instruction included not only technical skills but also literary appreciation, religious knowledge, and moral instruction that created educated individuals who understood their cultural heritage while possessing the practical competencies necessary for professional success. Students study classic Egyptian literature, religious texts, and administrative documents that provided both educational content and professional training. Mathematical instruction in Egyptian schools included arithmetic, geometry, and practical problem solving that prepared students for careers in administration, engineering, and commerce. Egyptian mathematical education emphasized applications rather than abstract theory, teaching students to solve real-world problems while understanding the mathematical principles underlying their solutions. Egyptian schools also provided instruction in geography, history, and natural science that gave students broad knowledge of the world while preparing them for administrative responsibilities that might require understanding of distant territories, foreign cultures, and natural phenomena. This comprehensive education created informed professionals who could adapt to diverse challenges and opportunities. The teaching methods used in Egyptian schools included memorization, copying exercises, practical applications, and individual instruction that accommodated different learning styles, while ensuring that all students achieved minimum competency standards. Egyptian teachers developed pedagogical techniques that balanced discipline with encouragement while maintaining high educational standards. Egyptian educational institutions included temple schools that specialized in religious education, government schools that trained administrative personnel, and private schools that served wealthy families who could afford personalized instruction. This diversity of educational options created multiple pathways for learning while serving different social and professional needs. The career prospects for Egyptian school graduates included positions in government administration, religious institutions, military service, and private commerce that provided social mobility and economic security for educated individuals. Educational achievement could overcome limitations of birth or social background for students who demonstrated exceptional ability and dedication. Egyptian libraries and archives served as repositories for educational materials and provided resources for advanced study and research. These institutions maintained collections of texts, documents, and reference materials that supported both formal education and continuing professional development for educated Egyptians throughout their careers. The preservation of Egyptian educational traditions through written materials, institutional practices, and cultural transmission enabled Egyptian civilization to maintain intellectual continuity across millennia of political and social change. Egyptian educational achievements influenced subsequent educational development throughout the ancient Mediterranean world. Finally, let us examine the extraordinary Egyptian understanding of time and eternity, which influenced every aspect of their civilization and created concepts about human existence, historical development, and cosmic order that continue to influence human thinking about meaning, purpose, and the nature of existence itself. Egyptian concepts of time included both linear progression and cyclical repetition that reflected sophisticated understanding of natural patterns, historical development, and cosmic order. Egyptians understood that some aspects of existence followed predictable cycles, while others involved irreversible change that created new conditions and possibilities. The Egyptian calendar system integrated astronomical observations with religious beliefs and practical needs to create comprehensive frameworks for organizing human activities according to cosmic principles. The calendar wasn't simply a practical tool, but a religious and philosophical system that connected human life with divine order and natural harmony. Egyptian historical consciousness included detailed record-keeping traditions that preserved information about past events, while providing guidance for current decisions and future planning. Egyptian historical thinking understood that past experience could inform present choices, while recognizing that changing conditions required adaptive responses rather than simple repetition of traditional approaches. Egyptian religious concepts of eternity included both individual survival after death and cosmic continuity that transcended individual lifetimes and historical periods. These concepts influenced Egyptian behavior, social organization, and cultural production in ways that emphasized long-term thinking and commitment to values that transcended immediate concerns. The integration of temporal concepts with architectural design created buildings and monuments that were intended to endure for eternity while serving immediate practical needs. Egyptian architecture embodied concepts about permanence, continuity, and transcendence that influenced design decisions and construction techniques while creating structures that have indeed survived for millennia. Egyptian concepts of cosmic order included understanding of natural laws, divine principles, and moral requirements that governed both individual behavior and social organization. The concept of Mayat represented truth, justice, and harmony that connected personal conduct with cosmic balance while providing ethical foundations for Egyptian civilization. Egyptian funerary practices reflected beliefs about time and eternity that viewed death as transition rather than ending, requiring preparation that could extend throughout an individual's lifetime, while involving family and community resources that demonstrated commitment to eternal values and continuing relationships. The cyclical nature of Egyptian religious festivals and ceremonies created regular opportunities for community renewal and spiritual reaffirmation that connected present experience with eternal principles while providing psychological and social benefits that reinforced cultural unity and individual meaning. Egyptian art and literature incorporated temporal themes that explored relationships between past, present, and future, while expressing Egyptian understanding of continuity, change, and transcendence. Egyptian cultural productions often addressed eternal themes while reflecting contemporary concerns and conditions. The Egyptian understanding of royal authority included concepts of divine kingship that connected pharaonic rule with cosmic order and eternal principles. Pharaohs weren't simply political leaders but religious figures whose authority derived from their role in maintaining divine harmony and cosmic balance that transcended political circumstances. As we reach the true conclusion of our extended journey through Egyptian civilization, we can marvel at the extraordinary scope and enduring influence of a culture that created not just monuments and artifacts, but ways of thinking about human existence, social organization, and cosmic purpose that continue to enrich human understanding and inspire human achievement. The ancient Egyptians achieved something that few civilizations have managed. They created a society that balanced practical effectiveness with spiritual meaning, individual achievement with collective welfare, and temporal success with eternal values in ways that sustain their civilization for 4 millennia, while contributing lasting value to human culture. Their greatest lesson may be that human societies can achieve remarkable durability and continuing influence when they build upon foundations of knowledge, wisdom, and commitment to ideals that transcend the limitations and interests of any single generation. The Egyptians understood that true civilization requires not just power or wealth, but the creation of institutions, knowledge, and cultural achievements that serve human needs across the vast expanses of time. Sleep well, and may your dreams carry you through the timeless halls of Egyptian wisdom, where the accumulated knowledge of 40 centuries continues to speak to those who seek understanding of human potential and the possibilities that await civilizations brave enough to build not just for today, but for all the tomorrows that stretch toward eternity along the ever-flowing waters of the eternal Nile. Yet there are still final mysteries and remarkable stories that deserve our attention before we close this comprehensive journey through Egyptian civilization. Tales that reveal the most intimate aspects of Egyptian life, the extraordinary women who shaped history, and the enduring mysteries that continue to puzzle scholars and inspire wonder in our modern age. Let us explore the fascinating world of Egyptian women, whose roles in society were far more complex and influential than most ancient civilizations allowed, creating opportunities for female achievement, power, and cultural contribution that wouldn't be seen again in many societies until modern times. Egyptian women enjoyed legal rights and social freedoms that were extraordinary by ancient standards. They could own property, conduct business independently, initiate divorce proceedings, and inherit wealth, according to laws that recognized female capabilities and protected women's interests. This legal framework enabled Egyptian women to achieve economic independence and social influence that supported both individual achievement and family welfare. The goddess-centered aspects of Egyptian religion provided female role models and spiritual authority that validated women's importance in both religious and secular contexts. Goddesses like Isis, Hathor, and Mut weren't simply divine wives or mothers, but powerful deities with independent authority who controlled essential aspects of cosmic order, natural phenomena, and human welfare. Egyptian women could serve as priestesses in temple hierarchies that provided career opportunities, social status, and religious authority comparable to male priestly positions. Female priests conducted religious ceremonies, managed temple resources, and provided spiritual guidance that made them influential figures in both religious and community contexts. The role of royal women in Egyptian politics extended far beyond ceremonial functions to include genuine governmental responsibility, diplomatic activity, and policy influence that shaped Egyptian domestic and foreign policy. Queens like Nefertiti, Tiye, and Ankhesenamun wielded real political power while serving as cultural patrons and religious leaders. Egyptian medical practice included female physicians who specialized in obstetrics, gynecology, and general medicine, providing healthcare services while developing medical knowledge that advanced Egyptian medical science. These women doctors received professional training and social recognition that enabled them to build successful medical careers. Egyptian business and commerce provided numerous opportunities for female entrepreneurs who could operate shops, manage agricultural estates, and participate in trade networks that connected Egypt with the broader Mediterranean world. Archaeological evidence reveals Egyptian women engaged in textile production, food preparation, retail trade, and financial services that contributed significantly to Egyptian economic prosperity. The artistic achievements of Egyptian women included painters, sculptors, musicians, and dancers who created cultural works while developing artistic traditions that enriched Egyptian civilization. Although individual female artists are less well documented than their male counterparts, evidence suggests that women made substantial contributions to Egyptian artistic development. Egyptian educational opportunities for women varied by social class, but included literacy instruction, professional training, and cultural education that enabled capable women to achieve positions of responsibility and influence. Elite women could receive sophisticated education that prepared them for roles in administration, religion, and cultural leadership. The domestic responsibilities of Egyptian women encompassed household management, child rearing, and family welfare, but these roles carried genuine authority and social recognition rather than simple subservience. Egyptian mothers were respected for their contributions to family success, while maintaining legal rights and personal autonomy that protected their interests and capabilities. Now let us delve into the mysterious world of Egyptian dreams and their interpretation, which played crucial roles in Egyptian decision-making, religious practice, and understanding of divine communication that influenced both personal behavior and governmental policy throughout Egyptian history. Egyptian dream interpretation was a sophisticated practice that combined psychological insight with religious knowledge to provide guidance for both ordinary citizens and royal decision-makers. Dream interpreters possessed specialized training that enabled them to analyze symbolic content, predict future events, and provide practical advice based on dream experiences. The Egyptian dream books, preserved on papyri, contain detailed interpretations for hundreds of different dream scenarios that demonstrate systematic approaches to understanding the relationship between dream imagery and waking life circumstances. These texts reveal sophisticated psychological understanding that recognize dreams as meaningful experiences worthy of careful analysis and practical application. Egyptian beliefs about dreams included the concept that sleeping consciousness could communicate directly with gods, deceased relatives, and other worldly forces that provided information not available through normal sensory experience. Dreams weren't simply random mental activity but divine communications that required proper interpretation to access their wisdom and guidance. The role of dreams in Egyptian medicine included diagnostic applications where physicians used patient dream reports to understand illness causes and determine appropriate treatments. Egyptian medical practice recognized that dreams could provide insights into both physical and psychological health conditions that weren't apparent through conventional examination. Royal dreams held special significance in Egyptian political culture and could influence major governmental decisions including military campaigns, construction projects, and policy initiatives. Pharaohs consulted dream interpreters before making important choices while using dream experiences to validate decisions and communicate divine approval to their subjects. Egyptian temple practices included incubation rituals where individuals slept in sacred spaces specifically to receive divine dreams that would provide guidance, healing, or spiritual insight. These temple sleeping ceremonies combined religious devotion with practical problem-solving that addressed both spiritual and material concerns. The integration of dream interpretation with Egyptian magic and religious practice created comprehensive approaches to understanding divine will and cosmic order that influenced both personal behavior and social organization. Dreams provided access to supernatural knowledge that complemented other forms of divination and religious guidance. Egyptian dream symbolism included complex systems of interpretation that connected dream imagery with real-world meanings according to established principles that were taught and preserved by professional dream interpreters. These symbolic systems enabled consistent interpretation while providing frameworks for understanding divine communications. Let us now explore the remarkable Egyptian festivals and celebrations that created community unity, religious devotion, and cultural identity, while providing recreation, economic opportunity, and social cohesion that strengthened Egyptian civilization across its vast territories and long history. The Opet festival at Thebes represented ancient Egypt's most important religious celebration and demonstrated the integration of religious devotion with political authority, economic activity, and cultural expression that characterized Egyptian civilization at its peak. This annual festival lasted for weeks and involved elaborate processions, religious ceremonies, and community celebrations that attracted participants from throughout Egypt. The festival processions included magnificent displays of religious statuary, royal regalia, and artistic treasures that demonstrated Egyptian wealth and cultural achievement while reinforcing religious beliefs and political authority. These processions followed carefully planned routes that enabled maximum public participation while showcasing the splendor and power of Egyptian religious and political institutions. Egyptian festival preparation required months of planning and enormous resources that created employment opportunities while stimulating economic activity throughout Egyptian society. Festival organization involved craftsmen who created ceremonial objects, food preparers who supplied festival feasts, entertainers who provided musical and dramatic performances, and administrators who coordinated complex logistical requirements. The religious dimensions of Egyptian festivals included elaborate rituals that renewed divine relationships, reinforced cosmic order, and provided opportunities for personal spiritual experience that connected individual Egyptians with their gods and community traditions. These ceremonies weren't simply spectacles, but meaningful religious experiences that served essential spiritual and psychological functions. Egyptian festival music and dance included sophisticated artistic performances that combined entertainment with religious devotion while preserving and transmitting cultural traditions. Festival performers included professional musicians, dancers, and singers who maintained artistic standards while creating memorable experiences that enhanced festival meaning and enjoyment. The economic impact of Egyptian festivals extended throughout society and created significant business opportunities for merchants, craftsmen, and service providers who supplied festival participants with food, accommodation, transportation, and entertainment services. Festival commerce contributed substantially to Egyptian economic prosperity while supporting diverse occupations and entrepreneurial activities. Egyptian festival foods included special preparations and delicacies that were prepared specifically for ceremonial consumption, while providing culinary variety and social enjoyment that made festivals memorable community experiences. Festival feasting reinforced social relationships while demonstrating Egyptian agricultural abundance and culinary sophistication. The social functions of Egyptian festivals included opportunities for courtship, business networking, political communication, and cultural exchange that strengthened community bonds while facilitating various forms of social interaction that were essential for Egyptian social cohesion and cultural development. Egyptian regional festivals celebrated local deities and cultural traditions while maintaining connections with national religious and political institutions. These local celebrations created community identity while reinforcing broader Egyptian cultural unity through shared ceremonial practices and religious beliefs. Now, let us examine the fascinating Egyptian relationship with animals, which extended far beyond practical utility to encompass religious devotion, symbolic meaning, and cultural identity that made animals integral participants in Egyptian civilization rather than simple resources or possessions. Egyptian animal worship reflected sophisticated religious concepts that recognized animals as manifestations of divine power and wisdom that could provide spiritual guidance and supernatural assistance. Sacred animals weren't simply symbols, but living embodiments of divine presence that received care, respect, and religious devotion from Egyptian communities. The cult of the Apis bull at Memphis represented one of Egypt's most important animal religions and demonstrated the elaborate care and ceremony that surrounded sacred animals. The Apis bull was housed in magnificent accommodations, fed the finest foods, and attended by professional priests who maintained the animal's health and spiritual purity according to strict religious requirements. Egyptian animal mummification extended preservation practices beyond human remains to include cats, birds, crocodiles, and other animals that were believed to possess spiritual significance or serve as offerings to various gods. The animal mummification industry created employment for embalmers while demonstrating Egyptian beliefs about animal consciousness and afterlife survival. The role of cats in Egyptian society included both practical pest control and religious significance that made cats beloved household companions and sacred animals worthy of protection and veneration. Egyptian cats received special care and legal protection while serving religious functions that connected households with divine blessings and supernatural protection. Egyptian crocodile worship, particularly associated with the god Sobek, included elaborate temple complexes where live crocodiles were maintained as divine representatives. These sacred crocodiles received luxury care while serving religious functions that provided community protection and agricultural prosperity through divine intervention. The symbolic meanings of Egyptian animals included complex associations with specific gods, cosmic forces, and natural phenomena that made animals essential elements in Egyptian religious and cultural systems. Animal symbolism influenced art, literature, religious practice, and social customs, while providing frameworks for understanding natural relationships and divine principles. Egyptian animal husbandry techniques included selective breeding programs that improved livestock quality, while developing specialized breeds adapted to specific purposes and environmental conditions. Egyptian farmers developed expertise in animal genetics, nutrition, and healthcare that maximized agricultural productivity while maintaining animal welfare. The economic importance of animals in Egyptian society extended beyond agricultural applications to include transportation, manufacturing, and trade activities that depended on animal power and animal products. Egyptian economic systems integrated animal resources in ways that maximized their contributions to societal prosperity while maintaining sustainable practices. Egyptian veterinary medicine developed systematic approaches to animal health care that included surgical procedures, pharmaceutical treatments, and preventive care that maintained animal health while advancing understanding of biological processes that benefited both animal and human medicine. Finally, let us explore the enduring mysteries that continue to puzzle scholars and capture imaginations, the unexplained aspects of Egyptian civilization that remind us how much we still don't understand about this remarkable culture and its extraordinary achievements. The precision of pyramid construction continues to amaze modern engineers who struggle to understand how ancient Egyptian builders achieved such extraordinary accuracy using tools and techniques that seem inadequate for the task. The Great Pyramid's alignment, proportions, and construction methods suggest knowledge and capabilities that challenge our assumptions about ancient technological limitations. The missing records from certain periods of Egyptian history, including the deliberate destruction of information about Akhenaten's reign and other controversial events, leave gaps in our understanding that fuel speculation and debate about hidden aspects of Egyptian political and religious development. The advanced knowledge demonstrated in Egyptian medical, mathematical, and astronomical texts sometimes suggests understanding that seems impossible given the supposed limitations of ancient scientific methods and educational systems. These achievements raise questions about how Egyptian scholars acquired such sophisticated knowledge and whether we fully understand their intellectual capabilities. The construction methods used for moving and positioning massive stone blocks in pyramid and temple construction remain partially unexplained despite extensive research and experimentation. Modern attempts to replicate Egyptian construction achievements often fail to match ancient results, suggesting that important techniques or knowledge have been lost. The symbolic meanings embedded in Egyptian art and architecture include layers of significance that scholars continue to discover and interpret, suggesting that Egyptian cultural productions contain depths of meaning that we're still learning to understand and appreciate. The preservation of organic materials in Egyptian tombs sometimes includes items that shouldn't have survived according to normal decomposition processes, raising questions about Egyptian preservation techniques that may have been more sophisticated than currently understood. The accuracy of certain Egyptian astronomical observations and predictions suggests access to information or calculation methods that aren't fully explained by known ancient techniques, leading to ongoing debates about Egyptian astronomical knowledge and capabilities. As we truly conclude this extended journey through Egyptian civilization, we can appreciate that our exploration has taken us through 4 millennia of human achievement, innovation, and cultural development that continues to inspire and challenge our understanding of human potential. The ancient Egyptians created not just monuments and artifacts, but ways of thinking about existence, society, and human purpose that remain relevant and inspiring today. Their civilization endured longer than any other in human history because they understood something fundamental about human nature and social organization, that lasting achievement requires not just power or wealth, but the creation of institutions, knowledge, and cultural traditions that serve human needs while inspiring human potential across the vast expanses of time. The wisdom of ancient Egypt flows like the eternal Nile through the landscape of human knowledge, carrying forward insights about architecture and engineering, medicine and science, art and literature, religion and philosophy, social organization and individual development that continue to enrich human understanding and inspire human achievement. Rest now in the knowledge that the greatest achievements of human civilization are not those that serve the moment, but those that serve eternity, not those that glorify individuals, but those that honor the human spirit and its endless capacity for growth, learning, and transcendence. The ancient Egyptians built for eternity, and in doing so they achieved it. Sweet dreams, and may they carry you along the timeless currents of the Nile, where the wisdom of ages whispers still to those who listen, where the monuments of eternity stand guard over human hope, and where the promise of what we might become continues to beckon across the endless desert of time toward horizons bright with infinite possibility. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more history documentaries.